We are live. Welcome to my video on the fourth Twilight movie, 2011's Breaking Dawn Part 1. So I am going to start with a review that only spoils the first three movies. It is impossible for me to get into specifics about this movie without spoiling those movies. I guess, actually, just briefly, yeah, if you haven't started watching these yet, and you're, I 100% get, the people who want to know if, how far to go into a series before they start watching it. Yeah, I would say watch up to and including this one. I haven't watched the fifth one yet. If I remember, I guess I'll start that one by saying, before I get into spoilers, about the first four movies. But yeah, anyway, once I've done the entire spoiler-free review, I will get into spoilers for this movie, but I will verbally warn before I do so. The movie is rated PG-13, so will this and be. Yes. And yeah, I still think these are great. Yeah. Let's get into the, yeah. Let's see. Yeah, so, there's only so much I can go into of the, I'll say that the movie opens with the wedding, and this is, of course, not a huge surprise to those who watched the first three. And yeah, I really got into like the emotion of the wedding. Like I find that in movies, wedding scenes can be hit or miss, and it, among other things, depends on how much do the audience care about the people getting married, or if it's not focused that much on them, the people that we are focusing on. But it's one of those things, it can be a cheap way to just, score some points with the members of the audience who just like to see that sort of thing. And I'm not saying that because, like, oh, weddings are not like a guy thing. No, I mean, the way that, in like a horror movie, a scene of violence or sex might be a way to score cheap points. It's not a gender thing for me. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. We see, some of the preparation. We see the wedding itself and like partying. That I can never remember what it's called, especially in English. Never gone to an English wedding. I'm Danish. But yeah, the party thing they have after with dancing and such. Yeah, I thought all of that, worked. And yeah, after that, other things happen. And all I'll say, I'm not going to spoil them in this first chunk of the video. All I'll say is I was invested from start to finish. Yeah, there's a good amount of psychological accuracy. I'm not going to give away whether anyone has cold feet, but I will say, it's brought up, and, we see how different wedding guests, handle the wedding. Not everybody is, there is a little bit of conflict between some characters. And let's see, yeah, it felt authentic to the world that the first three set up, and the characters established, the relationships developed and such. And yeah, very good level of detail as well. It really felt like the people working on this, yeah, like they wanted each aspect to really work. It didn't feel like anybody just like, didn't really bother. And right, so as far as tone goes, There are people who say that this movie gets campy at times. And I don't necessarily disagree. Things they say is a bad thing. I understand that not everybody feels the same way about, and I'll acknowledge about camp, and I'll acknowledge I wasn't always the biggest fan. But I think you're entitled to some camp in certain circumstances, and it's also one of those things. I can understand being frustrated with the camp if you think it's unintentional. I do not think this is unintentional. It strikes me as being purposeful. I don't mean to be snide, but I don't understand how anyone was surprised that the movie featuring a love triangle that is 1/3 werewolf, 1/3 vampire, with like treaties and you know, this is a world that features an entire like secret hidden, you know, vampire government, and some people didn't realize it was going to be campy. I said I wasn't meaning to be snide. Sometimes it's just one of life's happy accidents. Yeah, I absolutely loved the camp of this. Yeah. I mean, if you are not yet super familiar with these movies, you know, it's not as campy as, you know, a number of other, you know, pieces of media, but it's not really trying to be nonstop camp either. And yeah, the dialogue, everybody feels like they have their own distinct voice, and they do a good job of like having, you know, sometimes interesting issues are raised, other times it is, you know, that it's not all of it, and it doesn't need to be, but I never felt like someone said something that where it just felt like, okay, that character would never say that based on what we know about them. And yeah, so the direction. So as I mentioned in my Kinsey video, I was not planning on doing, you know, 2 weeks in a row 2 Bill Condon movies. But what can I say? Sometimes it just works out like that. You know, I did Kinsey for the last week of Pride, and yeah. Let's see. I think he did a really solid job here. I would not necessarily have suspected that, you know, I had to double check that he made this, but I mean, I guess I can kind of see, there's you know, there's some horror elements, like in the Candyman 2 movie that he also directed. You know, a lot of it is about like interpersonal relationships and such, like Kinsey, and the and broaching, you know, difficult subjects that are important to get into, again, like that movie. And I realize he only made Beauty and the Beast later, but yeah, in both of these, and I suspect also part 2, which he also directed, yeah, the integration of special effects with live action elements in a seamless way. But yeah, it doesn't feel like he or anyone else is like ashamed to be working on this. They clearly, you know, were invested in making it as good as possible. And yeah, I would say this has some of my favorite scenes that he's directed. And yeah, he never loses track of it, because there's a, by now, substantial cast of characters, and you know, it juggles multiple tones. There are concepts that it's important for the audience's investment that the movie is, you know, treating with some degree of seriousness, where, you know, a lesser director might have been like, oh, people aren't going to take this seriously, I'm going to, you know, they're going to make fun of me, I better throw in some irony. And yeah, it never felt like, it's, you know, which, like, I mean, this was a, I guess we do still today, but yeah, when this was made, a lot of irony and cynicism in movies. So the cinematography and editing are really, really strong. This has some of the most visually striking sequences in these first 4 Twilight movies. I think, I don't know how much I want to give away. I'll just say there are decisions made with cinematography and editing that really work immensely well. Yeah. I think... Yeah, I will give a little bit of example. So the movie is set over, you know, a period of time where if they didn't take care, we would be lost as to how much time has passed. And some of the time they have characters say, you know, X amount of time has passed since this thing. But other times, yeah, they'll very nicely, you know, yeah, ah, sorry, I was mixing up my, they'll say how much time has passed, and then, you know, visually we see a certain, there's something where we can, you know, yeah, something has changed in the time that has passed, and they do a good job of that. Yeah. Yeah, it utilizes a number of different techniques with both cinematography and editing that really, it always feels very purposeful. It never feels as though it's just, oh, this, you know, this DP or editor was really fond of this particular, you know, way of filming or cutting. The production value is quite good. I don't know how much I want to give away exactly why, but I'll just say you can definitely see money spent on this movie on the screen. Yeah, set design is quite good. Yeah, you can tell at a glance, you know, where we are, and, you know, is this somewhere that someone, you know, you get a sense of who lives there based on it. Costumes and makeup are also really, really great. So during the wedding, some of the guests showed up wearing clothes that were from when they were turned, when they became a vampire. Yeah. When they became a vampire. I haven't watched, I want to say is it just called Renfield with Nicholas Hoult and Nicolas Cage. But I feel pretty good about, you know, Nicolas Cage. He finally became a vampire. But yeah, I thought that was it was a fun decision. They do quite a good job on that. I think that might more or less cover. Yeah. The music always really works with both needle drops and original score. I cannot go into why I love the sound design here, but I will just say, yeah, they this was the sound design was handled by someone who appreciates that whilst it is currently at least, impossible to make us feel directly, like you can through a movie. You cannot, directly make us feel what a character is feeling in a completely, you can certainly imply it strongly enough that we, yeah, and holy crap. In a good way. That was good. Holy crap. Yeah. The characters. Yeah. I continue to really my favorites as well as the ones that I'm just fond of get really great character moments and actions and lines of dialogue and such. And at least one character really grows and changes over the course of this. I don't think I want to give away exactly whomst I am referring to, but yeah, they do quite a good job on that. And yeah, the acting continues to be quite good as well. Yeah, at least one actor is asked to really do something that a lot of actors would balk at. And yeah, they do an amazing job. Some really, really powerful performances in this. I already mentioned that I was never bored. I think an argument could be made that the pacing, I wouldn't necessarily say has problems, but I can kind of understand some people took issue with. See, I think it's one of those things. I think before you say, or at least after, you say if a movie or other piece of media bored you, I think you should have to say, do you care about the characters? Because I super get, if you don't care about these characters, yeah, you're not going to want to watch The Wedding, for example. But yeah, I'm not saying that there's something wrong with, being bored by some part of this. But I think it helps a lot if you are invested. Yeah, I've seen some say that, oh, it's like they really draw out the, I don't know, obviously whenever you take a novel and split into two, especially if it is a sequel and you didn't split all of them into two, yeah, there is a risk that you don't quite have enough material for an entire, but yeah, for me, it flew right by. I remember when this came out and I saw people say, oh, they, I guess I don't want to give away exact. No, actually, yeah, I already mentioned that there is a wedding. Some felt the wedding went on for too long. And, yeah, I was thinking maybe this will be a place where I feel like, but, I mean, I'll grant that some running time is devoted to it, evidently more than some felt it warranted, but it's different parts of the wedding. Like, that's again, like, I get it. If you just, I think if it was genuinely just, they take a really long time. Let's say the wedding played out in real time or something. Like, yeah, I would probably think, okay, this is a little excessive. But, like, what we have, we start with fairly shortly before the wedding and, they're setting things up. And then we have, yeah, we also, yeah, we see some of them receive the invitation to the wedding, and we see, the walking up to the walking down the aisle. Is that what it's called in English? We see you know, yeah, the party after, and some stuff right after that, and just they keep going to different parts of the wedding. I never felt like they spent too long on any one part of the wedding, and each part there's something else that's, you know, yeah, I thought there was something fun about each part. You know, the one element that plays out over multiple parts of this is that Alice is like, she loves planning this wedding. She wants it to be the perfect wedding, you know? And yeah, I thought they did, you know, that was a fun element. And just, yeah. Right, I just realized I completely forgot. I guess by now you might have realized, I'm not trying to, like, destroy this movie or something. I think there are some, you know, there are some criticisms of it that were made really well by my fellow leftist YouTubers, you know, people who are significantly better at this whole thing than I am, and the links to those videos will be in the description box. And do note that some of them spoil the, you know, yeah, all 5 of these movies. So the special effects reach new heights. They've really gotten to a place where the werewolves and vampires speed running, they're hardcore gamers, you see. It looks really, really great by now. There's, yeah, wet fur is one of those things that can be really difficult to get exactly right. There's a number of different elements you have to get exactly right, and it's one of those things also when, you know, most of us have seen wet fur at one point in our lives, so we can immediately see if there's something genuinely off about it. And yeah, I don't think there was. It also gets a lot out of the fact that it is willing to use multiple different techniques. It goes without saying, there is, you know, they definitely use CG in this. You know, there's certain things they, you know, I already mentioned, you know, there's werewolves. Some stuff they would have to use it for. But then other times, it simply makes better sense to build something practically and use, and they do that, and they don't even rely on just one type of practical effect either. You know, there's a bunch of different. If you, you know, if you have the Blu-ray or have access to it, yeah, some really interesting behind-the-scenes stuff there. And let's see. So I think I will. Yeah. The this is not as much about action as the third one was, but what there is really, really good. Excuse me. And yeah, the horror is genuinely, like, it's PG-13 horror, so, you know, obviously take it with a grain of salt, but they do push the PG-13 rating. They are not leaving that thing intact. And yeah, you know, the fantasy element also, I thought, was satisfying. I cannot at all go into why without spoiling something, but, and yeah, the stuff that gets it, the PG-13, and even pushes, I thought they did a good job. Like, it never felt gratuitous. It always felt justified, and I'm really glad that they pushed the PG-13 rating, because there's certain things that really needed that. I think that might just about cover. yeah, I think that's everything I can say without spoiling anything. So let's see. I'm just gonna note. There we go. So from here on out, I will be spoiling absolutely everything in the movie. Yeah. So we open on a montage of people receiving their invitation to the wedding, and of course Jacob's quite frustrated, and this sets up his arc of maturing over the course of it very nicely. I think, Taylor Lautner, I know some people don't think he is that good of an actor. I think he does well in these 4 movies. I really loved him in Scream Queens, where it was also clear, maybe he learned on this, like, because that one is, also very purposefully camp. Yeah, he absolutely nails it. There's no sense of like, what am I doing here kind of thing of like, yeah. I think that does. Yeah, I think I want to say the actor's name. I'm sorry, my wrists are too bad to check right now. Billy Burke, a Mustache Dad, does a good job of both having this sort of sadness, and his daughter's growing up. A lot of parents think it happens too fast. You occasionally get parents who think it can't possibly happen soon enough, but also he is happy for her, and Renee, who is purely happy and calls out to Phil, a name that is either short for Philip or Philharmonic Orchestra. No, I'm sorry. That's ridiculous. That's too silly of a joke, even for me. Nobody's actually named Philip. Let's see. Yeah, we see, as is not exactly a surprise, Alice, loving wedding planning. Great work on the sound effects for the shoes. Like, we can't literally feel them, it's a movie, but we get they're uncomfortable for Bella to wear. No, that was not the only thing I was referring to in the review when I talked about the amazing sound design. Yeah. The birth scene, holy crap, they really did not, and also her healing afterwards when becoming a vampire. Anyway, yeah, I love Alice's reaction to Bella suggests, can I just go barefoot? And she's like, you absolutely cannot. Because like you get, she, Bella might be saying, oh, I don't want to make too big a deal out of this, but Alice is like, no, this is your big day. This is the most important day of your life, which, for a lot of women, that is the case. And, I know some men are like, oh, well, I mean, a lot of the men who react like that are conservatives who don't think women should be allowed to work or remarry or in any way, like, literally survive without being married to a man. So, yeah, why wouldn't it be a super important day to her? Like, yeah, I have stopped long ago trying to get conservatives to make any kind of rational sense. I hope to see it one day. That would be wonderful. To be fair, I have met a few conservatives who made perfect sense. Thing is, they were all ex-conservatives. It's just a bad ideology, and I'm gonna move on now. Let's see. I think the let's see. Yeah. Love seeing the Cullen family very happy to be setting up for the wedding, carrying heavy stuff with ease, and such big smiles on their faces. And then we have the bit with the engaged couple talking about whether or not they have cold feet. And, yeah, like I mentioned in the review, they bring it up, but no, both of them are genuinely, really excited for this. And Edward's saying he's been waiting for 100 years to marry her. Such a romantic thing to say. See, if you're a man and you cannot figure out how to talk to women, I'm not saying, mimic everything that Jacob and Edward say and do, but yeah, some of these things, you know, yeah. I'm going to move on. I think I've already ranted enough about, conservatives and such. But yeah, I quite appreciate seeing this side of Edward that he's kept suppressed for, 100 years. The fact that he did, in fact, kill some people. And I really love the decision to stage it in a way where there are several seconds where we think he's telling Bella that he killed that woman watching the movie. I mean, I know a lot of people consider it rude to walk out during a movie, but that is still an overreaction. But no, it's because he could tell the murderer's intent through the telepathy in that other patron, that we do see briefly. We don't see that guy get up, but we also don't see him not get up. So it absolutely works. The implication is very strong. Yeah, really nicely done. Just yeah, we see her walking, and we get the let's see, I guess sound effect of vampire speeding, and then someone walks up, and we think, oh, Edward. Oh no, that's the other guy, right? We saw his face from the side briefly, and then Edward attacks him. Very very nicely done there. And yeah, let's see, the way that yeah, nice bit of cutting between the different ones. We see one had a knife, another had a gun. These guys were starting some crap, and yeah, this thing, Bella and Edward briefly debate, is it right to kill a killer? And as I've expressed in the past, I do not think so, but, I'm a big proponent of the idea that violence should only ever be the last resort. I'm not saying never, I'm saying exhaust all other options first. But it is something, I appreciate it feels to a lot of people like justice, and because of that, it is important to address in media. Let's see, and yeah, she says no, but they were all, terrible people that were killers, and he says, but they were all human, and yeah, I think that does sum it up very, very nicely. Heck of a thing, killing a man. Take away everything he is, everything he's gonna be. And let's see, then we have the, yeah, then we hear about the bachelor party. And yeah, at first I was also thinking, like, wait, he's not literally going to, like, a bachelor party with a stripper, and that, yeah, Bella was thinking that. But no, they're going hunting. And Emmett, yet again, being such a wonderful older brother type, jumping up to the window, is like, send him out before we come in after it. There's the line about, they're going to destroy the house to get to Edward. Let's see. And yeah, it is still really great seeing. It's still, I know, it's silly. I've watched 4 movies of Jackson Rathbone playing Jasper. Somehow, to me, one of the main things I think of that actor playing is the protagonist of Dread. That's D-R-E-A-D, not D-R-E-D-D. I want to say it's from 2009. It's not the 2012 Judge Dredd movie. Now, yeah, we have the nightmare before the wedding with the Volturi. Everyone at the wedding, other than the 2 of them, are dead, which genuinely is something I can understand being deeply upset by. Who's gonna eat the wedding cake now? But yeah, that was a nice bit, because they, other than that, they only appear in, like, the post-credits scene. And let's see, I think, yeah, the bit where they're doing makeup, and Rose comes in and she says she'll do the hair, and Alice knows weddings bring people together. It's like, it doesn't feel like, she's just being so annoying. No, she genuinely cares about this. Weddings are a happy occasion, and she loves working on planning them and having all this. It's not, because, like, sometimes when you'll see movies where like a woman is super into planning someone else's wedding, it's like, it becomes clear, oh, this is like an ego thing. She wants people to say, look at the wedding she planned. She wants to take away the attention from like the bride. Ah, she's so selfish, and it's just, to be clear, the following is me quoting female feminists. The idea that women have to compete with each other is an aspect of patriarchy. It is not healthy for women. Like, it's fine if you're a little jealous or something, but, ideally you try to work on that, and you don't have to do that alone. Find someone who won't judge you when you admit that that's the case, and yeah, work on it together. Now, then we have the, yeah, very sweet with her parents, other than Charlie's joke about mom being old. I suppose I've heard significantly worse from divorced, dads. And let's see. But yeah, the thing about, something old and blue and Bauer, yeah. Let's see. Then yeah. Then, he walks her down the aisle and she asks, just don't let me fall. And he says, never. Which I'm pretty sure means he would never let her fall rather than he would never not let her fall. But yeah, he can be really sweet when it's called for. That's, again, something I really appreciate about these movies. Like, sometimes when, you get these kind of imperfect parent types, there's like a, you can tell that the writer is taking out frustration over their own parents. And I get that. I totally do. I think it's good when you use that to actually explore that sort of thing. But if it's just like these brief little, bits, then I think, if you're not going to make a thing out of it, a lot of the time I think it's better if it's just not there, if you just have more healthy parents, emotionally healthy, supportive parents. I forget his name, but yeah, the guy from the high school being called out on, you've got a little, yeah, you're drooling over the sisters. Yeah, and I think, it's, they mentioned that in the behind the scenes, they wanted at least a little bit more with the high school, the fellow high school students. They don't have, there's not a lot of room for them in the movie, so they made sure to really give them, their little moments here, and yeah. And them talking about, the cake and, pretending that the wedding, that they think it's everything's great when Alice gets there and the thing. Let's see. And yeah, I quite like the way they handle the vows. We don't see both of them say every word the way that some weddings, including wedding scenes, do, which can get repetitive and drawn out. Like, I get it. It's a contract, the in real life. That's part of the reason why. If you don't write your own vows, then there is, in a number of places, an expectation that you say every single word there. And I also 100%, I don't, in real life, I don't blame anyone who does actually want to say those things, especially if you are the bride or groom. Try not to if you're just a wedding guest. And if you want to see it in movies, I'm also not saying there's anything wrong with that. Yeah. And yeah, I thought that it worked really well, the way that, one of them will say a few words, then it cuts to the other, and then the other one will say the next few words. And so we get through them with, within fairly little actual running time, and the, you do feel that this is a big day for both of them. They're so happy that they're able to get married. And let's see. Yeah, and they hold and dance, and everybody else just disappears. It's just the two of them. Very sweet. I really think the movie did a good job with the romantic and sweet stuff, and the what's the word? And then also later the more harsh stuff with the her deteriorating health because of the baby and all that stuff, and the birth scene. Yeah, really effective contrast there. See, that's something I think if it didn't have, I will 100% grant, like pacing wise, if this movie didn't include the pregnancy, which like fairly early, like yeah, actually almost immediately, almost as soon as she says she must be pregnant, that they start talking about there's some, this is wrong, and not very long after we see her deteriorating. If that was not in the movie, if hypothetically, if the movie was a lot of wedding and then a lot of like honeymoon bliss and then it ended, I'd be like, I don't know that we needed an entire movie for that, but I genuinely don't think that it is, too much. Let's see. I don't know about the last movie. I haven't watched it yet, but this one, I am glad that it got an entire movie for all that. Like, I mean, I don't even know what you would particularly, like, I guess you could trim down the wedding, but then there's not as strong of a contrast between wedding bliss and, because like, once they do get married, the sex thing is, a little bit of a bone of contention between them, and as soon as they have, yeah, the pregnancy follows almost immediately after that. So yeah. But let's see, what was the other thing that I wanted to say? I gotta say, I think it's a great cliffhanger that she's now a vampire. That is, and bloodthirsty. So that's, yeah. I that was supposed to be like the midpoint. I maybe that works in the movie, the book rather. Right. Holy crap. I don't know how I'm so out of practice at this. Thank you, Arts Cafe. Frequent commenter, long time, supporter, subscriber, friend of mine for requesting this. And yes, as you requested, I did not read the book. Let's see. I think that I feel like there was one more thing that I wanted to say. Yeah, yeah, that probably does cover. Yeah, then we have the. Yeah, I also quite liked the bit where she's walking down the aisle and we can clearly see Stephanie Meyer, and she's genuinely happy to see her characters like this. She probably didn't have to try very hard to act. Just focusing on oh, this is the book. It's just, yeah. And yeah, I wasn't sure if they were going to give her as overt a cameo again after the one she had in the first one, where, if you know what Stephanie Meyer looks like, you immediately recognize her. Like, she's like in the foreground, and, someone's handing her food. So, like, there's a little bit of, and then she steps out of frame. So there's a little bit of dynamic, it's not like drawing that much attention away from, I want to say it's a scene of Bella, and I forget who else, I'm afraid, but it has been months since I watched that first movie. But yeah, if you know what she looks like, and she did press interviews for these from the first one, so pretty decent chance you do. Yeah, you notice her, and yeah, here is another. Let's see. I suppose it's unlikely she's playing the same character. I don't know, maybe Bella became really good friends with her. I suppose it's not impossible she knows Charlie or something, and that's how that ended up. But anyway, then we have we have the bit with the now ex-fiance of Laurent, who's convinced he couldn't have attacked Bella. You know, we're gonna have to forgive her. She's a little on edge since her father had to track her down, free her from captivity. And it's strange for me to see Mia Maestro in something that isn't Alias, but still nice. Always happy to see her in stuff. And let's see. Yeah, you know, the music is provided by a forced quartet who, you know, had to deal with the loss of one member. And let's see, yeah, we have the bit where, you know, Bella says goodbye to Jacob, who at first is nice, as he claims his middle name is, even though it's bending. That's a joke. Obviously, his real name is bodybuilding. And then he gets very upset with her when she says they're going to have sex before she becomes a vampire. And the other wolves have to stop him, since otherwise they'd have to finish what he started. You know, really, really well done of, like, setting up, you know, his... reiterating his, you know, he still doesn't really trust Edward. And worries about Bella. And you know, yeah, reiterating also the fact that the pack fight together. If, you know, one of them gets into, you know, conflict with vampire, then the expectation is other members of the, you know, the rest of the pack will join in, which, you know, extremely relevant for later, once the whole thing about, you know, when they find out about the fetus, and, you know, they start talking about, well, you know, we can't let this out. You know, we're all going to have to take them out. And let's see, I think, and also, you know, making clear, you know, at this point in the story, yeah, Jacob still isn't quite as mature as he is by the end of the movie. And yeah, we have a very sweet goodbye between Bella and Charlie, and they really do nail it with both the writing and the performance of him. You know, he says it's going to be very strange not having her live with him. It'll always be her home. He is never going to push her into tricking a clerk into selling her cigarettes just so he can grandstand about how moral he is compared. Oh, right. I really love the various speeches. Emmett, again, being such a wonderful jock older brother type, saying, you know, oh, Bella's not going to get much sleep anytime soon. And, you know, Charlie's like, I know Edward's going to be a good husband because I'm a cop. I know things. And, you know, at first we're like, oh, he means he's a good judge of character, which is also funny because he's like, I feel like there's at least one thing about Edward you do not know. And then he removes all doubt by opening his mouth again, specifying, you know, he's going to take Edward out if he isn't a good husband. The classic, anything you do to my daughter, you know, I'll do, you know, twice as much to you, which you got to be careful with. I heard about this one guy who responded to the father of his date saying that by giving the daughter half of everything he owns. And the goodbye with Renee is also very sweet. And right, the dancing was great. And I believe it is period-appropriate dancing by Alison Jasper. You know, the 1920s. Certainly her dress matches that. I believe his suit does as well. In the behind the scenes, I'm afraid I forget who, but one of the male actors does note, you know, why I don't know why men's fashion hasn't changed in 100 years. If you, as well, are wondering that, and I want to make clear, I normally do not use the B word that means a female dog, but that it is her channel name. Verily Bitchy just recently did a video on yeah, among other things, you know, gender in fashion. And yeah, it's absolutely excellent. And she does a phenomenal job explaining that and other things. Yes, things. Let's see. Yeah, they travel through Rio to get to the island, Ellis Island. Well, Esme Island. And he carries her over the threshold. So sweet. Um, let's see. And apparently the place where they went, the street party atmosphere, that was where people actually do party there. And there were locals in the behind the scenes talking about how, true to life it was, and how normally they didn't get to see this represented accurately in American movies. And yeah, we get the montage of her getting ready because women are pressured to worry so much about body hair and such. We don't see him shaving and such. Do they? Do the vampires in this franchise grow body hair? I actually forget. If that's even been addressed. Anyway, the suitcase comes open. Apparently Alice packed lingerie, which, okay, I mean, they aren't related by blood, so I guess it's less creepy. And technically they're not even really living so much as siblings either. It's just what they tell humans they are. And she goes and joins him for the swim. Again, so romantic. And, after the sex scene, which I kind of like that there was some humor there with him like breaking the bed, but yeah, that's kind of an old joke about sex, but yeah, is pretty funny. And and I haven't seen it like visually done so much. It's mostly like verbal joke about, yeah. But we see the morning after the postcoital. She's remembering the sensations, really nicely done, and done well with the flashbacks. And afterwards, he's upset about the physical injuries he left her with. And I quite like her line. I am happy. I was 5 seconds ago. So now he won't touch her sexually anymore. And that was also, so you're just not going to touch me anymore. And he puts, he like caresses her cheek. It's like, not what I mean. And let's see. Yeah, she has a dream where they, get sexual, and she wakes up crying, and then they do have sex again, which has the housekeepers very disturbed, not seeing it, but seeing the aftermath. And let's see. Yeah, Jacob talks to the other wolves about his worry for Bella, the jealousy he feels and such. Yeah, and again, we're seeing, it's gradually happening, but he is getting closer to, perhaps not so much in that. I guess maybe that scene is more about reiterating, yeah, he's still not completely there yet. But yeah, the others point out, are you really gonna sulk all the way into the sunset about the necklace? And then we have a good way to show Bella is pregnant by her having cravings for food that she normally doesn't eat, or at the very least not together. And the thing about her being late on her period, I appreciate her jumping from saying, oh, it's, because he says, oh, it's been 14 days. She's like, oh, I'm late on the period. I mean, because like, yeah, he was not really putting two and two together like she was. Very typical guy. And then we have the housekeeper realizing something is going on because she knows legend. She says, there's death. The baby will kill her. And let's see. That was also a good contrast because the first time, at first it's like, oh, she sees the two of them see the bed, and they're like, it's like, it feels comical because it's like, it's just sex, it's not that big a deal, although I guess it's extra work for them, so that is rude. But the let's see, but not long after, it's like emotional, as Edward is saying, please, I'll do anything, just please help me if you know anything. And then scary when she says morte. Let's see. Then we have, Jacob. Yeah, so they do go back. Jacob goes to confront, and they do quite a good job building up to the reveal of Bella. For several seconds, people are in front of her in the shot, so we and Jacob can't see. And they also conveyed it's been an additional 2 weeks. There's that line telling us that, so we know that this is how she looks after that much time with the fetus inside. Let's see, but yeah, that was another area where I felt like the editing, a lesser would have, especially like, I guess I don't know for sure if there was a lot of pressure. Certainly a lot of big movies, there's pressure on, it has to be a very specific running time, or they put like a ceiling on the running time in a really silly way. I do think that there were some issues with the theatrical cut of Justice League that, yeah, just a tiny bit more. Like they wouldn't have had to have that much more, but just, yeah, some more time. I think just 15 minutes more running time would have allowed them to flesh out things that ultimately are underdeveloped in the actual theatrical cut. Let's see. I think, yeah, I feel like there was one more thing I wanted to say, but yeah, that's a scene where you could easily see them trimming it down to where Jacob just walks in and immediately sees her like that. It wouldn't be difficult to edit it to that. They also do a good job on her basically pushing it as far as they do a good job on her basically pushing it as far as they can with how messed up she looks in this last chunk of the movie. Let's see. That's actually, I'll just briefly talk about. So in the behind the scenes, they talk about basically they had this like software for the CG that, let's see, they subtracted body fat through the, not literally, but the visual of it, yeah, basically like got like an image of, well, what would her skeleton look like, and then they got the skin as close to the skeleton as they could, kind of, and it's the kind of thing where, we've seen CG where they didn't have that kind of software, and so it maybe ends up, and we're looking at it, we're like, there's no way that's what it would look like, and it's distracting, and yeah, here they do a really good job. Let's see, but yeah, Jacob asks what happened, and so she brings him up to speed about the weird neighbors, the Tannis root, the nightmare. And then the talk about reproductive health is had, with some talking about how there's a fetus in there, others not really talking about it as that. And Bella says it's not any of their decisions to make. So, very much we're seeing the somewhat conservative author grappling with reproductive health for women under Mormonism, and yeah, it's only become more relevant in the years since the movie came out with the repeal of Roe v. Wade. Yeah. And let's see. Yeah, I like when, yet again, so protective, such an older brother steps up to prevent Jacob from attacking Edward. And yeah, Edward and Jacob talk. Edward agrees Jacob can kill him if Bella dies, showing how much he does care, which we, the audience, already know, but Jacob has for a long time not really believed. And here he is starting to see, oh, wow, that is, okay. Because, and that's, again, it's a sign of maturity, because it's one thing to be given such significant evidence. If you are not yet mature enough, you might discard it and continue believing in something that has just been disproven. I didn't even say the word conservative. And then we have the Jacob tries his best to talk Bella out of it, and it was also fun. I don't know why he thought that, I told him, you don't listen to me. You gotta think, just, yeah. And Rose is very protective of Bella now because of the baby, which is also quite a good, because, yeah, like, she values life. That was made clear in, I want to say it was the third movie. That was always the issue. She didn't like that Bella was so eager to give up her life when she herself never had a choice. And let's see. Yeah, we have the telepathic conversation between the werewolves. And yeah, I mean, I appreciate, yeah, it is campy. I just don't think that's a bad thing. I thought it worked. I cared about the discussion. And yeah, Jacob breaks with the pack, is ultimately followed by Seth and Leah, who both want to protect from Sam. This is a good way to escalate things, this idea of an all-out battle between Sam's pack and the Cullens fighting alongside Jacob, Seth, and Leah, whilst Bella might die, because of the fetus soon to become a baby. The third one, well, let's see. The third one, it was especially about how many of the vampires there were. So they had to make, they themselves had to have, but yeah, here it is somewhat, everyone involved is someone we personally know. They've had screen time across these movies, and it is a really effective way to make it more emotionally resonant to imagine, someone that we just think of as like, oh, they're at the very least trying to be good, and now, oh, they're gonna kill a baby, and we understand why, but just, yeah. Let's see. Right, I guess I'll just briefly note, I am pro-choice. I think, as like ideally, third trimester abortions should hardly ever happen, but that was already the law under Roe v. Wade. Conservatives didn't have a leg to stand on by claiming, and after a while they started saying, oh, it's infanticide. Oh, they're literally waiting until the baby's been born and then killing it, and it's like, how could anybody believe this crap? And now women are dying because of just... It's difficult not to be frustrated with Republicans and conservatives in general, but the white conservatives, especially cishet men. Yes, right. I definitely don't think that there is, like, if I think it is sad whenever a child dies. I mean, essentially death should be like something that happens when you're old and you're ready to die and you've had a full life, But it is obviously especially sad when it's small children. Let's see. By the way, if you haven't watched it yet, fairly recently, Rebecca Watson did a video. Let's see if I can recall the title. RFK is going to kill 1 million babies. And let's see. Putting hopefully for many, nail in the coffin of the idea that they do want babies to survive. Anyway, I think that does... Yeah, we also have, thing about the vampires being weakened. They haven't hunted for weeks. Also makes it more potent. And let's see. Yeah, I'll just briefly say, so yeah, this does not, the action is more frequent and no, wait, I guess I did say that in the review, in the third movie, but yeah, I think that what was new here made up for that. Not every movie I watch has to be super action-packed. I thought they did a good job with the camera work and editing, highlighting that, yes, despite the significant physical distance between Jacob and Edward, they can both hear each other. They both have super hearing. Makes the scene somewhat more visually compelling than if they were standing right in front of each other. And after all, there is a lot of distance between them emotionally as well. Okay, I know that Leah dislikes Esme because Esme's literally a vampire, but she's just such a nice undead being. I feel bad when she's sad. Also, when we see Emmett sad about Bella. And yeah, very creepy research work on the computer. Not every single... Let's see. Did the third one... I feel like the third one... I don't remember the third one having creepy, you know, online research. But the first two... You know, the first one had for vampire. The second one had for werewolf. And now this one has for vampire babies. Now, the computers they're using are Macs. They're on loan from McCready. I remember hearing that Apple refuses to let villains use Apple products in Hollywood movies, so I guess the CEO is Team Edward. And then we have Jacob's snide remark being taken seriously, and it does sound like something he would think about even a fetus of a vampire. And it is a good bit of acting when you see Jasper, who we know from the second movie sometimes struggles to control his bloodlust around fresh human blood. He has to be led away by Alice so he doesn't gorge. And, I mean, I've heard of doctors under certain circumstances having access to fresh human blood, and there are other pieces of media where vampires do that as well, like Blade. So I guess it stands to reason that a vampire doctor would indeed be in that same situation. Maybe that's what's really getting to Jasper. He's like, dude, stop being such a stereotype. You give all of us a bad name. And yeah, the idea of her actually having to drink human blood is genuinely a good bit of disturbing horror material. And that's something, let's see, in the behind the scenes, I think, was it Stephanie Meyer who said that she was like trying to think of, you know, how far would you go to, you know, to save, you know, your baby, and you know, pushing into that sort of thing. And yeah, very effective. And yeah, she tries some. We get a few seconds before we find out how she feels about it, and she says, it tastes good. Oh, great. She's tasted blood and she wants more. Good going, Creature of the Night. That is still one of my absolute favorite songs from that movie. Very good job on her back with the bones protruding as well. You know, I know from the special features, you know, it's a special effect. I know how they did it. But still really nicely done, very convincing, and a good way to demonstrate. Let's. I don't know if I can explain it all that well, but there is like a double thing. Let's see, is it that the reflection? Yeah, I just don't remember, but if I recall, that is not Kristen Stewart's actual back when we see the bones protruding like that, and that is the kind of thing, you know. Some would say, oh, just, you know, like build on top of it with like latex and such. That can work, but there are also circumstances where that kind of thing doesn't feel completely, you know, yeah, they did a really great job. Yeah, the bit with Bella on the phone, we see a tear running down her cheek. Obviously, she can't tell her dad the truth, not even a severely cleaned up version, but she does feel bad about not being able to do so, and you know, they are worried that she'll die, and she's not able to say goodbye to him. You know, that is, yeah. It also feels like a really organic conversation. Charlie wants to know if Edward still seems amazing to her and how she's liking marriage so far, and feels bad that her honeymoon didn't get to be what she had hoped. Let's see. You know, this is again where a lesser writer writing this, like, dad character would be like, you know, I told you, Edward was bad news, but you didn't listen, and now look at you. But no, that's not Charlie, you know. And then Edward is able to form a telepathic connection with the baby, and you know, likes both of their voices, genuinely sweet. And I believe that is something that has been proven. I forget exactly how, but babies being comforted by the sound of their parents' voices, something along those lines. But yeah, you know, Edward wants to test the theory, and so asks Bella, you know, could you say something more? I don't need much to figure out for sure. Just like, I don't know, 30 seconds. And then she starts saying, my husband Edward has just requested that I fill 30 seconds of airtime. And now he's being insistent about it. It's too bad because he's usually a very nice person. And that's 30 seconds. And yeah, Jacob sees the married couple bonding over the baby, and it is this thing of like, yeah, he is gradually getting to a part where, to a point where he can accept, you know, they are happy together, and Edward does want to protect Bella. You know, he didn't want this to happen. And it is very, there's a lot of guys who will see something that they don't like and try to find a person to blame, even when that's not, you know, he did, like, he was trying to tell Bella that they shouldn't. Um, let's see. Yeah, and, you know, Carlisle comes up, asks Jacob, can I borrow your ladder? And then we have the thing about, you know, he realizes Bella, you know, Jacob realizes Bella really is part of the Cullen family. And it's such a great misdirection. Like, I gotta say, I was sitting there like, no, Jacob, you know, I didn't realize there was a misdirection at first. You know, it looks like Jacob feels a strong enough kinship with Sam's pack that he's going to kill the baby for them. Turns out in reality, because of his love of Bella, the trust he does now feel for the Cullens, he's tricking the pack. And yeah, if he hadn't distracted as many of them as he had, there's no way that those Cullens would have been able to get past the werewolves. They barely did, and only because there were so few werewolves. And yeah, good way to increase the dramatic tension. The doctor is away while she's giving birth. Like, holy crap, you know. They were already talking about how difficult this was going to be, and, you know, maybe she won't live. And then, you know, it makes sense that he leaves, you know, there's, yeah. You know, more blood so that, you know, that she'll be okay for long enough to give birth. And yeah, you have the baby names, again, transitioning and contrasting with the violent birth, the horrifying, literal back-breaking labor. And that was actually achieved by a dummy that you can also see in the special features. And yeah, again, like, I'm so glad they didn't use CG. It would not have worked anywhere near as well. Like, there's just, listen, some people get, like, really annoyed when you say that. I get it. I'm not saying that it's 100% real. Like, it's obviously still an effect. But it's just when there is something physical on screen, like, even if what we're seeing isn't the thing that it's representing, a lot of the time it works better than CG. And yeah, the baby names is also very sweet. I really appreciate Edward being supportive during that. And so ultimately the birth is a fairly short scene, but it is also very intense. They really do push it as much as the PG-13 will allow for. And apparently, now I forget if I read, watched, or both, but there was something in the behind the scenes thing where, like, what happens in the book, it's described. Let's see, I think it's that he bites the umbilical cord over, or something along those lines. And yeah, you know, I'm not sure they would have gotten away with less than an R if they showed that. Which is kind of silly, because, like, the umbilical cord is severed whenever there's a birth, and we all got here through a birth. So, but I'm not sure why a 13-year-old couldn't see that. They're probably seeing worse in their absence, only education. I swear, I'm trying to not just constantly talk about. Should have read slightly ahead in my notes before I said that. It is a testament to American Puritanism that the birth, with its violent sounds and even some visuals, gets to be significantly more graphic than the sex. But yeah, holy crap, those sounds of, like, stuff, you know, squelching and breaking and just a whole, yeah. I also quite like the way they filmed and edited the birth. The POV from Bella of their, you know, heads. At one point, there's almost sort of a morph between Edward and Jacob's faces, because now both of them are functioning as a unit, working together for her well-being, where before they were competing and arguing a lot, and it ended up not actually doing a lot of good. And that is also something, like, ideally, you know, we gotta try to empathize with the people, you know, with each other in general. And yes, I know, I swear, I do empathize with conservatives. I just also really want them to stop letting the powerful conservatives ruin everything for all of us. But there are a lot of men who feel like, oh, I can't be friends with like a man who's with a girl I like, and it's just like, you're not helping her by that. It's just like, listen, if that person has qualities that you just cannot stand, that's something, I get that, but a lot of the time that's not even the case. Yeah. Let's see. And I think it is fair for someone to cut someone out of their life if that person just refuses to try to get along with other people that are important to the person breaking off contact. Now, let's see. Edward gets one of the others to hand him the morphine and then asks for a second one for Bella. And the scene does have us thinking that she might actually not come back to life. Also very compelling when he bites her in various places to help the venom spread faster. And then we have the wolves attacking, and at the start there's only just like 3 vampires left to fight, so things have gone from bad to worse. As far as their chances go. The rest of them do return, and then Jacob reveals to have imprinted. I also quite like they don't leave the baby completely alone. Rose is taking care of Renesmee. And yeah, we have the whole thing with the imprinting, which means they're not going to keep attacking. Really good action scene, very tense, good choreography. Everyone gets at least one really cool move. And let's see, the other thing that I wanted to say there was the montage of Jacob with Renesmee through the years is also really well done, and they use the software that predicts how someone will look when they're older, with the actress that ends up playing Renesmee in the second part. And we have the post credits of the Vulture teasing part 2. Holy crap, really looking forward to and I feel like they were probably just looking for an excuse to kill that woman. Like, they probably didn't kill her just because she misspelled Carlisle. And I gotta make sure to mention, very nicely done sequence of her healing, including her broken ribs going back out, the effect that shows the venom spread and cuts between the different faces leading up to her opening her eyes. And I already mentioned the red color, and the montage was very well done. First it's of this movie, and then it's of the previous movies. Really effective. This really has been such a journey. And I guess this is a good time to recommend, let's see, I think it was Jenny Nicholson's video on, what's it called again? 50 Shades of Grey. I also quite like that the abridged script for, I want to say it's called Baby Girl, the movie with Nicole Kidman, and Harris Dickinson, I think is his name. That the parody title for that is 50 Shades of Beige. Very nicely done. Good on you. I think that was Jess one. Yeah, she's always so freaking good at. Really enjoyed, if you read it, the at one point she's like, they're trying to figure out, well, why is Nicole Kidman attracted to Harris Dickinson? There's something about, like, is it the blandness? Is it the fact that he looks like, there's something about what he looks like. I don't remember the exact wording, but it's really good. In general, a lot of most of the recent abridged scripts have been really great. I think some of the really early ones a little bit rough, But yeah, in recent years, they've been great. I think that pretty well covers everything that I had to say about the movie. Yeah, I felt like the whole vampire kid thing was a good way to expand on the lore. It's not something that we've seen before. Normally humans and vampires do not procreate together. It's most of the time vampires either steer clear of humans, like Cullens and other vegetarian vampires, or they kill them for blood or turn them or something. But it's very unusual for this sort of thing to happen. And I remember seeing some people say, "Oh, how is that supposed to work? How could he possibly impregnate her, being that he's technically dead? I don't know. How is he breathing, walking? How?" Listen, the moment that you have the undead, you gotta suspend disbelief, or you're just gonna constantly be, I don't think it's really a problem, and I think it's an interesting development. And yeah, clearly Stephanie Meyer wanted to explore, you know, pregnancy and birth and the various reactions to, yeah. Let's see. I think it works well the way that each of these brings in something new. So the first one, it's, okay, so this is a world with vampires, and now there's this, this relationship between these two, by the end at least. The second one introduces that there are also werewolves, and there's conflict between vampires and werewolves, and, Bella, it's I guess the first one kind of brings up, but the second one really underlines. Yeah, it's also like the romantic tension was barely present in the first one between Bella and Edward. Jacob. Crap. Anyway, yeah. I got there eventually. And the third one with, what they call newborn vampires, which I get, when she named them that, was she like doing a foreshadowing is a tool used by, I forget if that originated with Jack Saint or no. Yeah. Didn't it originate with like H Bomber Guy? Anyway, they're both excellent. Make sure you watch their stuff. Jack Saint recently did one on like The Last of Us and Zionism. Really excellent. Yeah. But yeah, because like normally, no, newborn, that's like when someone has just been born, you would expect them to make up a new term for turn. But here here we have an actual newborn, and yeah, it underlines this normally doesn't happen. Like when it comes to vampires, newborn means someone they just bit. It does not, and didn't drain, didn't kill with it, but turned, because they don't expect to have kids, so yeah. I think that pretty well covers. Yeah, really looking forward to seeing, how it, yeah, the next step in the final movie. Yeah. I did just briefly want to note, so in the special features, we see the dummy that they used for the spine snap thing, and, apparently as soon as Kristen Stewart saw it, she, first she makes this joke that made me chuckle. I like to hang out with myself, it's just, yeah. But yeah, she walked up to it and she started like hitting it, like slapping its face. And I mean, I do think it is a perfectly natural, understandable reaction to seeing something that looks exactly like you but isn't you. She was beside herself.